Zoti ambasador, fillimisht faleminderit që dhe mirë se vini në këtë intervistë në televizionin Globi.
On the contrary, thanks very much for this opportunity, Aberdeen, to have a few words during the visit to Gostivar.
Pas skriningu dypalësh, fillon hapja e kapitujve për të vazhduar bisedimet me Bashkimin Evropian Vendin, por paraprakisht ne kemi një detyrim. Duhet të bëjmë ndryshimet kushtetuese. Zoti ambasador besoni që në Kuvendin e Republikës së Maqedonisë së Veriut do të sigurohen 80 votat e nevojshme për të kaluar ndryshimet kushtetuese.
The first thing to say is we actually have opened negotiations, so we've started the screening process, as you've indicated. Indeed, in the last couple of days, the bilateral, the more complicated process has begun, which we expect to continue through until towards the end of next year, 2023. And the next stage after that will be, in fact, setting the benchmarks and then opening the individual clusters of issues which we need to address in the negotiating process. And for that step, there is the agreement between the government of North Macedonia and Bulgaria that there would be a change to the constitution, as you've indicated. Now, whether or not the necessary votes exist within Parliament, that's a matter for the different political parties, both government and opposition. What I would say is two things. The first is that this country has a good record on inter-ethnic relations, and these changes would only consolidate that positive record. The second is to step back a moment and look at the bigger picture. We know it is the strategic goal of the country and almost all the parties to join the European Union. This will require enormous efforts by everyone, by government, by parliament, including the political parties across the political spectrum, by civil society, by business, by everyone. It has to be a national project. And given that I've not heard any objections in principle to the inclusion of people who identify as Bulgarian within the constitution, I've heard other objections, but not in principle. Given that's the case, surely that this strategic focus should occupy, should be the main focus of political efforts, and the approach should be to move forward as rapidly as possible on the negotiations, including through the amendment of the constitution.
Zoti ambasador, ju ndëgjova me vëmendje, por besoj që edhe ju keni dëgjuar partinë më të madhe opozitare maqedonase, konkretisht VMRO-DPMN dhe liderin e saj, zotin Hristijan Mickovski, I cili kërkon nga Bashkimi Evropian një garanci që t'i mbështesë ndryshimet kushtetuese, dhe garancia e tij që kërkon është nëse kjo do të jetë kërkesa e fundit që I bëhet vendit tonë për të vazhduar më tej rrugën europiane. A mund të siguroni që kjo është kërkesa e fundit që I bëhet vendit tonë?
I think as President von der Leyen said, the President of the European Commission, when she visited Skopje, we all have a responsibility to make sure that this process, the accession process, is focused on the reforms that the country needs to undertake in order to join the European Union, and that we judge the country's performance at every step of the stage, every step of the way, in line with those reforms, including in the area of good neighbourly relations. I can add that from the European Union side, we will work as closely as we can with everyone in North Macedonia, as I said, government, all parts of the political spectrum, all parts of society, to progress on the reform path, to progress towards the European Union, and will be fully supportive in those goals. But the impetus for this and the leadership for this must rest in the hands of North Macedonia.
Ballkani nuk ka qenë I qetë dhe nuk është as aktualisht që flasim bashkë me atë që dëshmohet se çfarë po ndodh në veri të Kosovës. Zoti ambasador, a besoni që siguria rrezikohet në rajon dhe a ka gisht në të gjithë këtë që ndodh Rusia?
This, first of all, for North Macedonia is a stable country. I don't see that changing. As you know, as regards the issues between Kosovo and Serbia, the European Union is very engaged. The EU High Representative for Common Foreign and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, was recently meeting with the leadership on both sides and passed some important messages. In particular, he called for the leadership on both sides to avoid any actions or statements which might result in the increase in tensions. And at the same time, he called on both parties to respect the commitments that they've made under the dialogue. Concerning the role of Russia more generally across the region and including in this country, we of course do have concerns about, particularly since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we do have concerns about disinformation and attempts to distort the truth about the war in Ukraine, and also negative narratives that they have been putting forward, particularly vis-à-vis European Union and other partners. And perhaps no more do we see that in the narrative you hear from them when they are trying to say the rise in inflation, the energy costs are not a result of their own invasion of Ukraine, but of EU sanctions. And to be very clear on that, EU sanctions do not target, are not the cause of these developments, the rise in inflation, the problem with energy. This is a direct result of Russia's unjustified war in Ukraine.
Gjatë gjithë ditës së sotme keni qëndruar në qytetin e Gostivarit, keni pasur takime me qytetarë, me përfaqësues të pushtetit lokal, organizatat qeveritare. Zoti ambasador, mund na thoni konkretisht cili ishte qëllimi i vizitës suaj që bëhet sot në qytetin e Gostivarit?
In a few words, the real purpose is to explain what's going on with the accession process, talk to people and listen. And that started with the mayor, the municipal council. Over lunch we talked to some civil society organizations, and in a short while we'll be joining a group of citizens for what we call a town hall discussion, when basically I can explain how we see things, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say about the accession process, but also about daily life, what they experience here. Also during our stay, during the visit today, it's been great to come here to the health center to see some of the equipment and the vaccines that we've been providing here and elsewhere across the country in the context of our support for combating COVID-19, but also in strengthening healthcare here in North Macedonia.
Zoti Geer, ishte kënaqësi, faleminderit për kohën që ndat për ne.
Shumë faleminderit.